Hi folks, Jason Webster here. Welcome to this episode of Inside PTI. Hey, today we are out in the field doing some planting trials, and today we're particularly looking at closing systems on the planter. Now, speaking of planters, you look behind me and you see a few of them. We've got 3 planters out here where we're set up with different closing systems, and I want to show you what closing systems we're testing here at the PTI farm and kind of show you what some of these look like and maybe some of the advantages of each and every one of these closing systems. So this year we're testing more closing systems than we've ever tested before. We've got single stage closing systems, which have been the standard for closing systems for decades. And then we move into some 2-stage systems. Some are manual, some are automatic. But I want to show you some of the differences in the different closing systems that we are testing out in the field. So let's go look at these planters. We'll show you some of the closing systems that we're looking at today in the field. All right, so this year we've got 7 different closing systems that we're evaluating in the field. And we're trying to get as fast as emergence as we can. That's our goal. Get this corn up out of the ground. This is all corn testing, by the way. We're trying to get this corn up as fast as we can. So we've got different style row units, different style closing systems. We're testing the same hybrid of corn in this particular field, and we're just trying to figure out in different conditions, and that's what's interesting about the field that we're in here. We've got tons of variability. We've got what we call HP and LP soils. What do I mean by that? HP is high productivity, good black dirt, flat, black, and beautiful, right? But then what if we transition into LP soils, low productivity soils? What happens then? So that's what we're looking here in the field. We're evaluating all of these different systems, and we're going to flag test this. We'll talk about that here more in a minute, but let's go through each of these closing systems and we'll show you what we're working with. All right, so when it comes to closing systems on a planter, their job is 2 things. We're asking these closing systems to do 2 things for us. Number 1, we have disc openers up here in front that are going to make the V. That's our trench where we're going to place the seed in the bottom of that trench. The walls that the openers make of the V, that's soil density. That could be compaction, especially if we're in wetter conditions out in the field. The problem with that is now you get a plant growing a root system and it can't get through that layer of compaction. Now the roots can't get to water and nutrients. Okay, so we want to bust through those sidewalls, make it look like we were never there. That's the first job. The second job is to get rid of an air pocket. So again, we've got that furrow, and we're going to put the seed in the bottom of it. We need the seed surrounded by soil because that's where our water is going to be at. That water is going to imbibe into the kernel, and it's going to let the kernel germinate and get up out of the ground as fast as possible. If we leave an air pocket surrounding that seed, it's just going to sit there. It won't be able to imbibe water because it's not attached to soil. So it'll finally get water to imbibe into the kernel after a rainfall, and it'll collapse that air pocket. But the problem is it's going to then germinate and come up and be a late emerger, and we all know what the consequences of that are. It could be a weed if it comes up too late. So that's what a closing system needs to do for us. Now we're looking at conditions in this particular field of what I mentioned earlier, HP and LP soils, high productivity, low productivity, how each closing system is going to perform in the field to give us the fastest emergence. All right, blast those sidewalls out and get rid of that air pocket. Give me the fastest emergence possible. So let's go through the closing systems. Number 1, we have the industry standard, in my opinion. This is what folks have been using for decades and decades out in the field. This is a dual rubber pincher system is what I call it. It's going to pinch the soil together around that seed. In dry conditions, it does a pretty good job. But we get into wet conditions, I think this one, the disadvantage is going to be it can't remove the sidewalls and can't remove an air pocket all at the same time. It's usually one or the other. But this one really struggles in wet conditions, but does fairly good in dry conditions. Okay, but this is very popular. A lot of folks have been running this. But I think a lot of people, as they've noticed it doesn't really work in marginal conditions, they've gone to some other closing systems, and that's what we've tried to include. Some of the more popular systems the guys are migrating to. So let's go look at our number 2 closing system. All right, the second closing system we're evaluating out here in the field is what's called the germinator. And so this is a new wheel. We haven't tested this one in the past. This is going to be our first year of testing this wheel, but this is a heavier wheel. This is a steel wheel. You know, you've got the same inside as your dual rubber that we just talked about, but we replace it with this rim all the way around it. It's got a little bit of a ledge right here to kind of act as a way to keep depth so we don't get too deep on it. But this is pretty aggressive, does a pretty nice job in tough conditions, breaking through those sidewalls and not leaving an air pocket. So this one has looked good out in the field. We need to get some stand counts here to figure out what we've got, but this is the new addition for us called the germinator. Okay, our third closing system is going to be another single stage system. Everything we've talked about thus far has been single stage. This has been a very popular system. This is a 𝗬𝗓𝘶𝗋 twister. And this is probably the first, what I'll call, spike wheel that came to the market that really everybody started looking at because they knew the dual rubber system wasn't working very well. And this one is a plastic wheel. It's a lightweight wheel. You got to be pretty aggressive on the T-handle back here to get the job done with this thing. But does a pretty decent job in the field. Again, trying to break up those sidewalls and get rid of the air pocket. The thing that we run into a little bit of the time with this is these short, I'll call them stubs. They can't get down deep enough. So if you're planting corn 2 inches in depth, sometimes it can be hard to get all the way to the bottom of the trench to remove the sidewalls in the air pocket. Does a good job in the top half, but sometimes we don't get too far down, clear down to the bottom. A lot of folks with spike wheels, a lot of times are scared that they're going to get down too far in the furrow and flick the seed out. And so they shallow up. But again, you got to get the sidewall all the way out, all the way down to the bottom. And that's where we can run into a little bit of a problem. But lightweight wheel, you got to be pretty aggressive with the T-handle here. But all in all, it's done a fairly good job out in the field for us and a very popular wheel. Okay, the fourth closing system we're testing in this particular study is another single stage system from Martin Industries. This is called the 𝗓𝘀𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗄. So again, we're removing the rubber wheels, we're putting the spike wheel on. These are going to be a heavier, more aggressive wheel to get us through those tougher conditions. But this is from Martin Industries called the 𝗓𝘓𝘀𝗶𝘀𝗓. Okay, our fifth closing wheel. Now we get into 2-stage systems. This is our Case IH unit. This is on a 2150S Case IH planter. Why do we call it 2-stage? Well, we've got these discs up here in front. They're going to try to get rid of those sidewalls that we're creating, right? And then we've got what I call the big fat tire on the back to push down and collapse the air pocket, right? So very popular 2-stage system, been out for a long time. This is manual. There's no automation to this. It's manual. We've got an air cylinder where we can control how much aggressiveness we have on these discs. And then we've got a spring back here for the big fat tire. Okay, our sixth closing system that we're testing out in the field is from Martin Industries, and this again is a 2-stage system. It's a manual 2-stage system, but this is a new system for us, brand new, testing it this year. We've got the first stage up here. You're going to see these large discs. You're going to see the curvature of these blades here. This is designed to go after that, those sidewalls, break those sidewalls up. And then on the back side, to push the air pocket out, we've got, again, a big fat tire, similar to the Case IH wheel that we just talked about. But again, a 2-stage system. We've got we can change the aggressiveness on the big fat tire, and we can still use our T-handle for the aggressiveness of these first stage wheels. But this is a manual system, manual 2-stage system from Martin Industries. And again, our first year testing with this particular closing system. Okay, our final closing system we're testing in this particular study is automated 2-stage furrow force. So we've got our 2150S Case IH planter, okay, and we've removed their 2 small discs and their big fat wheel on the back, and we've replaced it with a furrow force system. Again, this is a 2-stage system. It's automated though. We've got sensors on this particular unit that it works very similar to downforce on a planter, where we can make sure that we keep ground contact to keep the row unit in the ground. It's the same thing with our closing system. If we start losing ground contact, we're coming up and we're not going to do a good job to be aggressive enough to get rid of those sidewalls and push the air pocket out. And so we've got an airbag on here that we can change the air pressure. If we're not getting the job done, we can put a little more air in this and be more aggressive. If we're too aggressive, we can deflate and we can lighten up. But as soils change, and remember, I told you we're in this particular field to test high productivity soils as well as low productivity soils. We want to look at the difference. We want to be able to react, as we go through each and every one of those environments in the field. The manual closing systems cannot do that. They're a fixed setting. They will always stay the same. This one we want to work for us. Go to work for us and change. Let's sense, let's measure. Right? Measure the environment and then let's adjust on the fly. That's what this system is designed to do. Again, first stage up here, we're going to blast those sidewalls out, make it look like we were never there. One job and one job only. Backside, we're going to push the air pocket out with these two wheels right here. So again, control with the 2020 monitor in the cab with this automated system. It's the only automated system we have in our closing wheel studies that we have here. And we're putting this to test against all of the manual closing systems that we mentioned earlier. All right, so this is what it looks like in the field when we do our flag testing. And this is what we're going to do with this closing wheel study as we've been talking about. So the thing I want you to look at with this is, if our corn's coming up all at the same time, as we flag these plants every 12 hours, you would expect to see one color flag because, again, all of the plants are coming up at the same time. But as you look back through here, you'll see a lot of different color flags, meaning that corn's coming up at different times. And we're trying to understand what can we do to get faster emergence. So today's InsidePTI agronomy tip of the day is fast emergence, uniform emergence is critical. What's it going to cost us if we don't get uniform emergence? Let's go to some data. Let's go to data from here at the PTI farm showing what later emergence, non-uniform emergence, is going to cost us. Look at this. Here's data from 2020, 2021, and 2022. Again, if we use 12 hours as our baseline, okay, it's not going to get any better than 12 hours. If we delay it 12 hours out to 24 hours, it's a 9% yield loss. If we go another 12 hours, this takes us to 36-hour delay, we're up to a 38% yield loss. It gets even worse. Another 12 gets us to 48 hours. We're up to 83% yield losses. And then everything after 48 hours is devastation. It's a 90% yield loss. So it just goes to show you, fast emergence is one thing, but we want uniform. We want all the plants up as fast as possible. If we don't, it's going to cost us. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about, shoot me an email at InsidePTI@precisionplanting.com, or by all means, stop in and have a conversation with your local Precision Planting Premier dealer. Thanks. We'll see you on the next episode of Inside PTI. Thanks for watching.